You are about to learn how to become free from hell and all of your suffering. And it's not as difficult as you might think. This is the path that I've taken, and so I know it will work for you, because I speak from my personal experience. Think about this scenario that many people find themselves in. They're struggling. Maybe they have a family, maybe not. But financially, they have a hard time surviving month to month. They have no free time, no free energy to do anything that they actually want to do. Do you mind? They don't like the life they're living. Maybe their relationships are in shambles because psychologically their mental health is poop. When you are in survival mode, you are not in creativity mode, which means that you cannot create anything so long as you are in this miserable state. And that is why these kinds of people stay stuck their whole lives. The only time they ever really escape is if they experience enough suffering to say, nope, I'm not living like this anymore. And they force their way to success. But I am saying you do not have to force your way to anything. That you can have everything that you ever desired, all of the success, without needing to try so hard. That you can live a life of freedom, of peace and joy and love, without needing to find it out in the world. That you can be happy for no reason. And so prepare yourself, because you are about to have your minds blown. When you look out into the universe, you see a few different things. One thing you see are stars, and another thing you don't see are black holes. You have a destructive force of the universe and a creative force. Stars give life to all things. Now, what are stars? You are looking at one. Stars are energy. So if we meditate upon the nature of stars, we can see a few things. We can see that energy is the force of creation. Energy is what gives life to things. And so energy and the force of creation are both the forces of life. What you give your energy to, that is what you create, that is what you give life to. We may understand that because stars give life to all things are energy. And what is energy? Energy is vibration, and it is frequency. When you increase the rate of vibration of the energy gets more powerful, it gets more hot. And the slower you cool it down, the more cold it gets. And so when you look at these two things, black holes and stars, they are polar opposites. You have the force of death and destruction, and you have the force of life and creation. And that is what existence is. It is the dynamic play between yin and yang, creation and destruction, life and death. And so too, in this mind and body of yours, your inner universe, there is also the dynamic play between life and death. Now, another aspect of the nature of stars is that they are the force of harmony. It is order versus the chaos of the black holes, versus the entropy and the disharmony. So energy, the force of life, the force of creation, the force of harmony, these are all one. Now think about the idea of depression for a moment. When you are depressed, it is like your life is being consumed by a black hole. Everything is gray. It feels like there is an elephant sitting on you. It is difficult to even get out of bed in the morning. The simplest of tasks is like trying to climb a great mountain. And you are suffering constantly. It is as if your whole world is being consumed by darkness, because it is. Depression is what it is like to be consumed by the force of death. Because you see, where life is not, death is. Where light is not, darkness is. And so, the degree of well-being that we experience in this life is determined by the balance of life and death within ourselves. If we become imbalanced and the force of death begins to take over, we manifest disease, we manifest problems and suffering and struggle, depression. We grow closer to a state of hell, because hell is eternal death. And so as we approach this death, we suffer all of the things that come along with that experience, while heaven is eternal life. And so too, the opposite we experience when we are headed in that direction. Meaning, we experience more peace, more love, more joy, less suffering. And it all comes down to vibration. You could say that heaven is the highest state of vibration and hell is the lowest. Now, the way our life is set up is so simple. We all have life, we all have energy within us. And our mind is a tool that directs the flow of energy. And so the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the things that we pay attention to. And this is the origin of sin and the origin of virtue. This is what the religious texts were talking about. Unskillful action, missing the mark. That is, the mind is like a bow and arrow, or it's like a sword. When you point it in the right direction, you channel your energy into thoughts, into actions, into emotions that provide you more energy in return. And if you point your mind in the wrong direction, you channel your energy into thoughts, into actions, into feelings that steal your energy. And so all depression, all illness, all suffering comes from one source and one source only. It all comes down to our inability to point our mind in the right direction. Now you will know whether or not any action was either a virtuous one or an unskillful one by the nature of your feelings in response to that thought or action. Because as you grow closer to heaven, you will feel better. And as you grow closer to hell, you will feel worse. So, like a plant that only knows whether or not it's growing closer to the sun or further into the darkness, so too you have this ability to know whether or not you are headed toward heaven or headed toward hell. Now, most people will find themselves in this kind of purgatory where things aren't really good and things aren't really that bad. There's an oscillation between, headed toward hell, headed toward heaven, but they never stray far enough to really experience either side. You see, where we point our mind, where we direct our attention is determined by what, do you think? In school, if you were learning about a subject that you did not care about at all, could you give that subject your attention? Or were you distracted or falling asleep? Or when you're talking to somebody and they're speaking about something that you don't care about at all, is it not hard to pay attention? Why is this? Instead, if that person was talking about something that really you enjoyed, suddenly you are imbued with life. You are deeply engaged, deeply present to the moment, very interested in what that person is saying. It is for no other reason then because your identity is associated with certain things. If you like a certain kind of music, you will be focused and interested on that kind of music and not on other kinds. Certain topics, certain ideas will interest you, and certain other ones will bore you. And what happens for a lot of people is that they get traumatized at an early age, and they take all of this baggage and this garbage into adulthood. They focus on negativity, on things that don't serve them, because that is what they have been conditioned to focus on. Once you take on the identity of somebody who wants to reach toward heaven, who wants to make things better, who wants to live a better life, your mind will begin focusing on all the things that are relevant to this new identity. So therefore, you will begin paying close attention to all of your thoughts. You will not allow a negative thought to go unchecked. Because a lot of the times why we find ourselves in hell is because we have a never-ending stream of negative thoughts, negative beliefs, negative stories in our mind, and we just don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to deal with them. And you see, when we feed these negative thoughts our energy, we give them life. We make them more powerful. And because they are stealing our life force, we grow weaker and they grow stronger. And so we enter into this kind of slave-master relationship. The same thing goes with all addictions. You feed the addiction, it becomes more powerful than you. And you are forced to surrender to its power, the power that you gave it. And to become free from negative thoughts or free from addictions, you become detached. You take your power back. And if you can sustain the detachment for long enough, it grows so weak to the point where it's no longer a problem for you. The problem is, so long as your identity is attached to certain beliefs, certain stories, certain addictions, if you say, yes, I am a person struggling with this addiction, I am a person who had these things happening to me, my life is the way it is because of this person or because of this circumstance, then you will continue to feed these stories your energy, and you will live in a bubble of your own misery. But if you want to become free, you have to take your identity away from these things. You have to take your attention away from these things. Build a new identity, a new version of who you want to be. And all you have to do is focus on that for long enough, and you will give birth, you will give life to this new form. And because your energy is the force of life, whatever you take your attention away from, that will begin to die. Because where life is not, death is. If you don't give attention to a relationship, the relationship dies. If you don't practice a skill, you become less good at it. So too, when you stop feeding these old identities, they just fall away. And step by step, you construct a new life because you realize that you are the creator, or at the very least, you have the power of creation within you. And your job, your only job, is to point your mind in the right direction, to point it toward heaven and away from hell. And in doing so, you will create heaven on earth, at least for yourself. And your energy, your presence will begin influencing the environment, will begin influencing others. And if enough people focus on heaven and take their attention away from hell, to stop feeding the fear and the shame and the guilt and the negativity, all the negative stories, all the negative beliefs, then overnight we could create a more heavenly world, a more loving and harmonious reality free from so much suffering.